Hello, everyone. This is a sidetrack number 11. And I'm here with Tim. Hello, Tim.
Live from quarantine. This is Timothy Deal.
Yes, and I am also in quarantine. And we didn't quite feel like doing a normal episode for a variety of reasons. We can't get together in the same way.
The podcast didn't want to take us to someplace different. Everyone's in quarantine right now.
And even the podcast. I know it's weird. And so we thought we'd do something a little quarantine-oriented, a little different today. Tim, did you notice today that it was snowing?
You know, I thought I might have seen a few flakes, which is not fair considering we've actually had like 60, almost 70-degree weather.
It was close to 80 yesterday, I think.
Yeah. But, you know, nothing surprises me anymore in terms of weather.
No. But so, no, you're technically still working, correct?
Yes, I am.
You're essential.
Since I work in legal services, that is considered essential, although we have cut way back on the number of appointments that we have in the office. But yes, so the whole quarantine thing's been kind of weird for me because my schedule hasn't honestly changed that much. Mm-hmm. Obviously, I can't go to the gym and church and do other live things, but for the most part my day-to-day is still fairly normal. So I somewhat, I mean, I'm grateful to have the stable income for sure, but there is a part of me that can't help but feel like I'm missing out on something.
Yeah, my poor brother says he's working harder during quarantine than he did previously. I'm like half off. Like I do financial stuff at where I'm working, so like I still have to keep the money rolling and things, and we're like half essential because we do repairs and things. So it's been a weird kind of on-off sort of couple weeks for me, which is, I mean, it's been nice to spend some extra time home with the kids and stuff, but also just weird because I can't quite get into a normal anything.
Can't develop any kind of routine.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's would be another thing that you have that I don't. The kids. I mean, that's a whole different ball game.
And they're learning from home. I mean, nothing new for homeschoolers, but it's a little weird when you are technically at a school and also not at school. My son loves it because he can get his work done in half the time it would normally take to go to school. But
Yep. The studious kids, that's the way it works. And he's right at that age. As someone who is homeschooled all the way, I can attest that I wasn't able to do that by the time I got to high school.
Yeah.
But yeah, that around Fio's age, yeah, that's totally doable.
Mm-hmm, exactly. But anyways, we're going to, even though you and I are both kind of out and about still to a certain limited extent, we thought today for our sidetrack, we'd kind of just pretend we weren't. And
well, I mean, and we are still trying to social distance from outside of just core essentials.
I don't do much. Some
of my family I haven't seen in a while, so.
Mm-hmm. But we thought we might give you, our dear listeners, kind of some kind of a walkthrough of our bookshelves, movie shelves, just kind of be like, hey, if we were stuck here forever, here's what we would have a chance to visit. Like if this was all we had, we were for the next year, here's what we would live on.
And admittedly, we stole this idea from one of our favorite podcasts, 99% Invisible, where Rowan Mars, the host, just wandered through his house talking about the design of various things that he had in his house, which was cool.
Yeah, it was kind of very neat. And honestly, if you're not listening to 99% Invisible, on one side, you probably should. On the other side, don't, because then it's much better than this one. No.
Good point.
So Tim, what do you want to? You know what? I've only looked at your little bookshelf, I think, in the living room, but you have a larger one elsewhere.
Yes, this is kind of fun to talk about our shelves because whenever I go visit someone's house, this is like one of the first things I look at. If they have a bookshelf out, I have to go look through it.
I've always looked at their books. Yeah, that's how you judge people. I mean,
don't judge a person by their bookshelf, or
yes, exactly.
But no, it does. A shelf gives marvelous insight to a person and their history and maybe things that are important to them. But yeah, what Nick is talking about out in my family room, I do have a small little bookshelf that has, the idea is it's going to be filled with comic books. I've got one shelf that's filled with a bunch of old Peanuts books that I got from someone who babysat us a long time ago, and they just had a ton of these, and I was fascinated, and so they gave me a whole bunch of them. These
you have years and years of the Peanuts, don't you?
Yeah, well, yeah, I guess it'd be years. Like, it's this collection of really old paperback size Peanuts collection.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And they're pretty worn out at this point because I got them when I was like 9, and so family used them quite a bit. But my goal is to fill up the rest of that shelf with various comics. That's going to be my end to being a cool uncle.
Nice.
At some point, I got the whole bookshelf. And then on top of that, I've got a smaller, this little miniature shelf thing that's got a lot of devotionals in it. But in my study, I've got 2 bookshelves full, and then my DVD shelf is in here too. I've had to move some of the books into, I recently got a little smaller cabinet shelf thing that I decided I'm going to start moving more classics into, just because I was beginning to run out of room on the bookshelves. So, but Nick, I know you've got a lot of bookshelves, some in your office, some in the basement.
Yeah. When we moved from our old house, so many boxes of books. And now they're somewhat organized. I'm not going to take everyone through all my shelves. It might be a little redundant, but they are organized in a relatively interesting manner. The one right next to the desk where I tend to type and do things like that, and I'm standing right now, it's sort of the top half's kind of like my main bookshelf for like books I find important. The bottom is all Ted Dekker stuff from Natasha. But like the very top shelf is basically my collection of books I had to read in school.
Okay.
And some of them I keep because like, I want to read that again. And other ones I'm like, I can't quite get rid of that one. And maybe, so we got
high school
cool
and
things.
College or both?
High school and college. And I've added some other classics. It's largely classics. So I've added like Wise Blood. I think we mentioned the podcast got added to that shelf. At some point I read The Fountainhead by Ayn Rand, added to the shelf. But I got books like Le Morte de Arthur I found at a garage sale. That I still haven't read that one. Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner, which is a great poem. What is this? Arthurian Romances. This is actually interesting story behind that one. That was I actually got for a gift for being in Randolph Johnson's wedding, who married Leah Angel, friends of ours at Taylor.
Oh, that's a cool wedding party gift.
Yeah, exactly. There's things like Luther, which is a play, and Macbeth, and School for Scandal, which is like some sort of, I don't even remember, it's from high school, some sort of play about manners, British sort of thing. Great Gatsby, that sort of stuff. All in this. A book that I don't detest many books I read in high school, but one that I always actually played up to testing, no pun intended, was Tess of the D'Urbervilles by Thomas Hardy. Anyway, so that's kind of that shelf. It's like my, hey, cool things that I either want to read again or I put there because they're too good to get rid of.
I think it's interesting, though. You kept a book that you say that you detested.
See, I can't get rid of classics, though. I didn't really detest. I think I have a feeling if I read it now, I'd appreciate more than I did as a sophomore.
I see.
But I don't think I would like it like I like A Tale of Two Cities. I love. Like I've read it like 3 times from high school.
Nice.
Yeah, so that's my classic shelf. Underneath that is my sort of science fiction shelf, where I have my Asimov and my E.E. Doc Smith, which is this fancy old school kind of space opera thing, Chronicles of the Lensman, Jack Van Salman Rushdie, Philip K. Dick, lots of Bradbury, some Michael Crichton, Space Trilogy, and my prize. I think I don't have mentioned on the podcast before. So I was at this book convention once when my sister owned a bookstore. And they give away lots of books at these things. And I kept looking, kind of drooling over this hardback in the case copy of The Children of Hurin by J.R. Tolkien just come out. And the lady watched me come around numerous times and look at it. And she's finally like, will you like that? I'm like, yes, please. It's like a $50 book I just got handed.
Oh, really?
Yes, it is. It is super nice. It has the case that the hardback goes in. Like the hard, and it has, it's like the nice paper and the pictures in it, and so that is my prize from going to a book convention one time.
Nice, that's very generous of her.
And then, okay, I'll just finish mine up real quick here. So the shelf underneath is largely Wheel of Time, and not even all of it because it's ridiculously large. And then in front, kind of like not stacked well, are these books I found in the library. They were just giving away, or I bought it. They're like 50-cent sale. It's basically my to-read list. And I have things like The Grapes of Wrath, Bridge of Terabithia, it's a short story collection, At the Back of the North Wind, The Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, just a weird hodgepodge of stuff that I will eventually get to.
Sure you will.
Yep. Well, hey, I'm reading one right now. I'm reading Agamemnon, the play, the famous Greek play that I also got from the library.
Wait, Agamemnon.
It's interesting.
I'm trying to remember, that's the one that's a Greek play, right?
Yes, I think it's pretty famous. Yeah. But I had never read it, I know of.
I feel like I might have read that one in Art as an Experience.
No, it sounds like one you would. I mean, at the beginning, I'm like, I don't know what's going on. And now I'm like, wow, this is really good. So,
yeah, I remember finding it tough, but meaty.
So do you have any sort of organization to your shelf for special books there?
Yes, I do. So I've got, like I said, there's two big bookshelves here. The one on the right is mostly the academic one. The bottom shelf has got binders from college and grad school, which I probably don't need, but when I look at this shelf particularly, it reminds me a lot of, I remember my parents having to sort through, weed out some books from college, or in my dad's case, dental school. And I remember being like 10 and being like, why'd you guys keep all these things if you don't, this long, if you're not going to use them? And they're like, well, there's so much time and money invested in these things. It's hard to give things up. And I look at this shelf and like, oh yeah, I really am my parents. But I've got like binders that's got like homework assignments, and I figure I'll keep it for research, right? You never know. But anyway, so the shelf above that is mostly film school textbooks. Some stuff that I read and really enjoyed. Honestly, there's some other books, particularly from like my religion and film class, that I never read, to be honest, and meant to. But when it became clear at that point in that class that the reading would not be tested in any way, that was one of the first things I dropped. It was a good class. I kept doing the class, obviously, but it's like grad school. If you don't have time, you've got film projects to do. Yeah, it just got put to the side. So there's a number of books, with titles like Religion and Film, Faith and Film, Imaging the Divine. I would like to read someday. Yeah. One of those books, probably the book in there that I remember enjoying the most that's on that shelf, is called The Genius of the System, Hollywood Filmmaking in the Studio Era. And I just thought it was a really fun film history book. Well, you brought stuff like that up in the podcast numerous times about this studio system. Yeah, the studio system, if I'm talking about that, is from ideas that sunk in from that book in particular. It was just, it was kind of like reading, one of those fun film documentaries on AMC or something. Mm-hmm. The shelf above that is kind of a mix of film school with some also stuff from my theater minor and undergrad, and some other books on creativity I've picked up along the way. My Jim Henson collection. I've got a mini Jim Henson's biography. There's a book called Make Art, Make Money. That kind of explores Jim Henson's way of doing that, which I thought has interesting ideas. And there's a book called Memoirs of a Muppets Writer, which is by Joseph A. Bailey, who did some writing for Sesame Street and for the Muppet Show. And so pretty cool insider perspective that you don't get too often. Nice. Yeah, that's a fun shelf. And then I'll finish up with the top shelf on that shelf, if that makes sense, is actually audio stuff. Oh, interesting. I've got a couple different Adventures in Odyssey albums, all on cassette tape, which probably need to be transferred over to something else at some point. Same with, I've got some other like cassette, there's some Bible stories. I have this thing, Dan and Louie was like this ventriloquist, and dummy thing that did this whole big thing of Bible stories, and I just liked them a lot as a kid. Nice. And then I've also got some old time radio from my old time radio days in high school. I was really infatuated with that, so I've got that's on that shelf too. So yeah, that's that one. That sounds very, very Tim. Before we move the movies, which I have a feeling mine won't be near as interesting. The other little bookshelf I have to mention, just because the top shelf, half of it's basically just books by me or other writer friends, which is an interesting thing. I don't know that everyone has. Yeah, I've got one of my shelves on the big shelf on the left. One of the middle shelves has got my collection of stuff that you've written, stuff that Nathan's written, some that we've written together, Story Project, Children of the Wells, Destroyer. Exactly. Yeah, I'm looking at all that stuff. Once the complete collection. That's a rare book. That's super rare book. Which is okay, because some of my short stories are there like, it's not that great. It probably doesn't deserve to be in a hardback book, but there it is. There it is. And then I just have to mention, under that's my shelf that has all my Dostoevsky and Lewis, and it has the Silmarillion. So that shelf's pretty. If I kept one shelf in the room, it might be that one. Nice. It has Les Mis, Moby Dick, Dostoevsky,
Till We Have Faces, Odyssey, Aeneid, Silmarillion, The Hobbit, and the Gulag Archipelago. It doesn't get much better than that. So
No, that's a solid collection right there.
that's a shelf right there. So Tim, do you have anything interesting on your? My movie shelf is largely.
Oh, you jumped to the movies? I thought you were going to go to your another bookshelf because I have.
Do you want me to go? I don't know. Am I boring people with my bookshelves?
I hope not.
Here, Tim. I want you to pick out one or two books that you want to have. You have a story behind.
Okay.
So I have a book here on. It's kind of hidden at all times, but it's one of these books I constantly come over to and think I should try reading that. It's a book I've tried reading twice. I've never finished, but it's constantly alluring me. And you've probably never heard of it. It's called Otherland by Tad Williams. It's a fantasy, not quite a fantasy. Basically, it's like an early book about like people getting stuck in a virtual reality sort of book.
Okay.
There's one of these like African clicking tribe is one of the main characters, and I mean and the guy writes really very interesting. There's just something about the plot that just doesn't. It's like a lot of visuals and not much movement, or at least from my memory. But it's one of those big like fantasy books that always like must read, and I just can't get through it. I don't know. I've tried numerous. I remember I first looked at this series, it's 4 books, back at what was that? Little Professor Bookstore. Do you remember that in Fort Wayne?
That sounds vaguely familiar. Was it in the mall?
There was one on DuPont, and there was one over by, well, I'm going to say Canterbury, because that's where I do it, but I'm sure there's off of Jefferson over by that part of the town.
Yeah, that does tickle some brain cells. I feel like they might have sponsored some shows on PBS or something.
Yeah, that's possible. And I remember looking every time I'm going and looking at this series. You know, back in those days, you go look at the fantasy. I would look at the fantasy, and you always find the big books with the cool covers, and you would just kind of skim through and be like, "Is this Wheel of Time worthy?" And none of them were, but at least that's how I did it.
Uh-huh.
So, give me one with a story.
Well, let's see. Looking at my shelf, the first thing that catches my eye, and I may have mentioned this. I don't know if you remember back in episode. I looked at this earlier. 46.
Oh, nice.
The expurgated version, or whatever you called that, whatever that word was.
Yes.
Where we talked about like minor influences. The Peabody Adventure series. I may have talked briefly about it, but it's this children's book series. Because one of my top shelf on the left side is mostly like childhood books. Novels that I liked as a kid. You've got Frank Peretti's Cooper Kid Adventure series. But the Peabody series are probably one of the most well-worn because I read and reread some of those books a lot. I don't know if anyone outside of like homeschoolers would know it because it was published by Bob Jones University Press. And it's your typical like kids solving mysteries and going on adventures. Mm-hmm. Written from a Christian publisher, but I really liked the author's voice in there. And I've always been kind of sad that she didn't seem to do a whole lot. She didn't really publish a lot after that. These were published in like, I want to say early 90s.
How many was it long? I mean, were there lots of little books, kind of like Box Art Children?
No, not exactly. No, there were 6 books. I think they were written for like 5th through 6th grade.
Okay.
The first one's a little bit longer. The second one the rest of them are considerably shorter.
Okay.
But yeah, like first one's like brother and sister. The first one's almost like 2 parts. Like in the first part, they break up a smuggling ring. And then the second one, they go on a summer vacation and deal with some other bad guys that they find out about out in the hills. So stories like that.
Oh, nice.
Very much in the kind of, Hardy Boys, Nancy Drew kind of tradition. But yeah, I remember reading them to my sisters a lot. And Jerry Massey was the author. So if she's out there, I'd love to hear more from her.
Nice. I think one of my more, I don't know if eclectic or just wide-ranging shelves on the very bottom of a third shelf here. But I have my collection of 80 of the Little Black Penguin classics that I think I've mentioned before. Yeah. And then behind them, immediately behind them, is my collection of, I think, what is it called? Is it Eton Press? Is that the fancy press with the books that are all like gold bound and everything? Yeah, Easton Press. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 books of different myths from different cultures, like Greeks and Norse and Hindu and stuff. And then right next to those two is my complete Far Side collection. Oh, so it's quite the comprehensive shelf here between myths, literature, and the best comic that was ever there. Maybe arguably second to Calvin and Hobbes, but. Maybe. But that's so I could live in this room for quite a while, honestly.
Oh yeah, no, I've seen that room. It's got a great collection.
And there's a lot of good young adults of Natasha's that I don't know anything about. A lot of them came from when she worked at the bookstore, advanced reader copies, and then like 2 shelves of like the complete works of Ted Dekker.
The last 2 shelves in my big shelf, I've got a book of like theology and Christian nonfiction stuff. Then my bottom shelf there has got a lot of eclectic stuff.
Nice.
It's got some like New Evidences and Man of Verdict, really big, thick stuff. It tends to be where the oversized books go.
Yeah.
But then there's also oddball stuff. Like I've got this book that I think I got for Christmas not too long ago, and I need to look some more through it. It was pretty fun, called The 2,548 Best Things Anybody Ever Said.
Oh, nice.
Which is a fun title. And I'm happy to say I've got that right next to a book called The 776 Stupidest Things Ever Said.
That is great. That is great placement there. That is good bookshelf work.
Thank you.
So what one book that you remember having read that you wish you had on your shelf?
Oh, that is
not something you want to read, but something you've read and you were like, I need that on my shelf, but I don't have it.
That is a good question. Let me think here. While I'm thinking, do you know of something?
Yeah, it's not a profound one, but talk about Little Professor Bookstore. And if anyone in the audience lived in Fort Wayne, and you can remember this with me, but I remember getting Adventures of the Lone Wolf. I had it at one point. I think I've since lost it or thrown it away or something. But it was like a choose your own adventure, except you could get items and you could fight bad guys in it. There was like this randomized number table in the back for like hitting people. And you can get it online for free now. But it was just like whatever age it was, probably late middle school. It was just magical that I could read this adventure book and it'd be a choose your own adventure and it'd be like an RPG. And it was it was awesome.
Yeah, I remember you talking about that. I thought you did have a copy of it.
If I do, it's been lost since.
Huh.
I've hunted, they've released it free on the internet. All like 20 books of it. But it's just not the same as having it in your hands.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I was trying to think of something really deep that I'd really want on my on my shelf. But I mean, here's the thing. It's in terms of like book buying, I don't tend to buy a lot of novels, which I know may sound strange, but like I think for me, because I grew up going to libraries quite a bit, and if there's a book you like, you can usually just go back to get it at the library.
Yeah, I have a habit. I don't buy a lot of books, but I always feel it's worth buying for me whatever I consider a classic, because I figure I can always pass this on to people.
Yeah, I guess that's the trick, because like it's nice to have a book, but at the same time you're not going to reread it very often.
Yeah, exactly. Books I can share, I like.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, this is going to sound silly, but the only thing I can think of is more just, I don't know that I really would, it's like, oh, look, that's on my shelf, but it's like, I like to look through it again. I remember when I was a kid, there was a series of books. I think it was there was a Sesame Street magazine that they collected in book form. And I remember there was this ongoing serial story with Ernie and Bert, where Bert was dressed up as Penelope. It was like a take on the old perils of Penelope. There was a series of like black and white, what do they call it? The serial films where,
okay,
she ends up on some sort of cliffhanger and then has to get rescued at the end. They did that with Ernie and Bert, with Bert dressed up as Penelope. I think it was the first time I encountered serialized storytelling quite like that.
Okay.
And it was
nice.
with Ernie and Bert, who are the coolest characters.
Yeah, it's great.
So yeah, it was. I remember that enjoying like hunting through the library trying to find the next copy, and sometimes be checked out and like, no,
That's awesome. Nice. So what do you think? Do we want to do a quick tour of our movie shelves as well?
Sure, why not? Since we talk about all manner of storytelling on here, I'm in front of mine now.
Yeah, you can start. Mine will be most of these are actually kid/Natasha movies, but I have some here that I will share.
Yours tend to get buried a lot in the back, I've noticed.
Mine, yes. I don't watch them as often as everyone watches theirs.
Well, here's the thing. I think the mentality behind movie DVD collection is different from the mentality behind book collection in some ways. I mean, it used to be much more common before Netflix kind of took over all of our viewing habits and streaming and Disney Plus. And I think it's good and bad in some ways. Sometimes I think people bought DVDs just to have them, even though they wouldn't really like how often would they really rewatch them? And it was just almost a status thing as much as anything. Like, look at this cool collection. I own this and this and this and this. But now there's just so much out there that, like, I feel like you don't really need to own it unless you really like it. And so that's kind of become my mentality for my movies. Although I do have some that I picked up from like used bookstores that I really don't need, like Hot Fuzz. I really should not have a copy of that, but I do for some dumb reason. But yeah, I've got one shelf that's just generic, various things like that. Avengers, Batman Begins. I have the first Final Fantasy movie for some reason. I wonder where that came from. And of course, the Lord of the Rings extended edition, and Indiana Jones, Star Wars, the necessities.
Yes, exactly. You know what? I don't have any Indiana Jones on DVD. It's actually kind of odd. But yeah, I have probably the things that come back to the most, and if you listen to Hijinks, you would know, are my collections of Babylon 5 and Lost.
Yes, those are very important collections.
And the Babylon 5 was very important early. I mean, until very recently, you couldn't even find it. I mean, to me, I like to buy movies that you just, especially even now, you can't find. I don't buy a lot of them, but like I have a number of Miyazaki's because it's so hard to watch them.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's the other thing that's important about a DVD collection. Yeah, if it's something that's like eclectic enough that you don't know if it will always be readily available to you. Because as great as the streaming services are, their libraries are not set in stone.
No. Well, like for a long time, Three Caballeros was a very good one to have. You couldn't get it anywhere.
That's true.
Or actually, I have The Point. Have you ever heard of The Point?
No. What's the point?
That's the whole point. No, it's a very, I think my dad got it for me just because we watched it. It was like one of his movies he showed us when we were kids, like Yellow Submarine. You ever watched Yellow Submarine, The Beatles?
I've never seen it, but yeah, I know.
Like that, but this was, I guess, 85, I guess it is. But it's an animated film. Ringo Starr narrates it. It's very like, I don't know. It kind of has the feel of like Phantom Toll Booth, kind of, in the sense of like it's a weird world. And Oblio's the main character. He's the only guy in his whole town who's born with a round head instead of a pointed head. And so he goes on this adventure to go like find his point and that sort of journey, cartoon, weird 80s thing, which I haven't watched forever, but it's a very interesting movie. Lots of music, like folksy sort of music.
Mm-hmm. Now here's a question. What would you say are the most well-worn movies, DVDs on your shelf?
You mean besides like the kids' movies?
Yeah.
Or most well-worn? That's a good question. I think that would actually be, I might have to go talk to Natasha about that. She watches movies more often than I do.
For me, I think mine are probably, and this will come as much of a surprise, but The Muppet Show seasons 2 and 3, and also the Storyteller collection.
Oh man, that's great! I wish I had that. Actually, that would be a good one to own.
Yeah, that's a very good one to own. And honestly, I think I say well worn, not just because I watch them on my own a lot, but I tend to try to take those to places if I think there's a chance that like someone's going to want to watch something.
Oh yeah,
those are ones I'm like. I'm always in the mood for some of those. Storyteller is one I tend to bring a lot, but not enough people are like eager to try it out. It's a little.
No, that's a shame. It's so good.
Yeah.
That reminded me. There was one. Oh, I do actually also have several seasons of Monty Python's Flying Circus, which is not everyone enjoys, but I do. Probably my most the movie I think I can always sit down and watch of all the movies I own. Honestly, is probably Castle Cagliostro. That is always worth watching. My son, it is still his favorite movie. Every time we watch a movie, he's like, it was okay. He's like, I'm like, didn't you like it? He's like, yeah, but it's not Castle Cagliostro.
That's great.
So, but yeah, we got a lot of the superhero movies and the kind of kid movie sort of things, and it got some Star Wars. We got John Carter, which I really need to rewatch because I loved that movie when it came out, but it's been a long time since I've seen it.
Yeah, and I don't think I've seen that since that came out.
I remember thinking it was much better than the critics gave it credit for. So yeah, but that's basically my movie shelf. Is it's not as storied, I guess, as my bookshelf. No pun intended.
Yeah, one of my biggest, I don't know, regrets is the right word, but so on one of my shelves, about half of it is anime, and about half of that anime collection is Full Metal Alchemist stuff. The only downside of that is, there's two different Full Metal Alchemist series.
Yeah.
But the first one, when I bought them, it came in these like season 1, part 1, season 1, part 2 sets.
Oh yeah.
And they have this little like guidebook inside them, which was kind of cool. But when I look at my shelf, it's like it takes up so much room.
Yeah,
it's one of the interesting things about DVD packaging. You know, sometimes they could do something a little too bare bones, and other times we want to take up half your shelf with this cool design.
So for some of the, I don't know, nerds out there, I guess I should mention this bottom drawer in the living room where I keep all my old video games.
Ooh.
And by old, I mean I have the original Chrono Trigger and the original Final Fantasy 1, 2, and 3, and Secret of Mana, Xenogears, some things that are now considered pretty much classics. I know. I think that the Chrono Trigger especially is actually worth quite a lot of money now.
I was going to say, yeah, you better hold on tight to those things.
So, yeah, I just thought it was interesting. It's all in this random little desk drawer here. But I figured those people who like old school RPGs might enjoy knowing that those things do exist in there.
Yeah.
Chrono Cross is in there too, which we've talked about.
Since you brought up the video game thing, let me see if I can move my setup here.
Super Nintendo and early PlayStation was when I collected a lot of that sort of stuff. So I have a lot of those what are now considered classic RPGs just sitting around there and not much else.
See, since you inspired me, I want to see what I have underneath my TV on the shelf there. I forget sometimes how many PS2 games I still have.
Well, see, I have like 2 PS2 games.
Well, it's partly because I inherited some from my brother-in-law, Eric Smith.
Okay.
He gave me a bunch that, since his PS2 stopped working, but actually even some of these were from before that. Some I have not played much. Let's see. Well, there's 2 Full Metal Alchemist games. I played one of those. But then I've got Brian burned us a lot of classic movies back when we were doing cinema selections.
Oh, nice.
I got that collection under there. And the complete series of Get Smart.
Ooh, nice.
Which I've had that for a while now. I don't think I've ever actually finished it, like late in the last season. But I enjoyed that one a lot as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
It's a fun show. This will go to show how much of a hoarder I am, though, because I've kept a bunch of our old VHS tapes, stuff that my folks didn't want anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those things I keep meaning. It's like, one of these days I'm going to try to transfer these over to something else. That's the librarian in me, I guess.
All right, guys. Tim, that was nice. I don't think I've ever actually looked that closely at your bookshelves.
I know you've peeked at it, but yeah, it's fun to look over. Every book kind of has a story. I mean, well, besides the story that's in it.
Well, and I think that's why physical books will never go away, or even actually, for that matter, DVDs, is that books are not just stories, they're also how they connect to our own lives.
You can pick up a book or a DVD or what have you and be like, oh, I remember when I first saw this or when I first got this book, where I was. I got it for Christmas, or I bought it at this one used bookstore somewhere.
And I have this odd trait that I can, every time I'm going on vacation with my family, I can always tell them what book I was reading last time, like any vacation. Like, oh yeah, that vacation, like we took the vacation with my entire mom's side of the family to Myrtle Beach. And I remember reading The Sword of Shannara. And, I remember reading Our Friends in Frolic 6 going skiing one year. Like, I know exactly, I can think of which house we rented the time I read Notes from Underground by Dostoevsky. I mean, like, for some reason, vacations, I can always tell you what I was reading.
Yep, I've done that. The downside is then it becomes, like, uber important when you pick out your book for the beach. I'm always trying to I need to find a new good, I'm always trying to find a cool pirate story to bring, at least one pirate story of some sort, or seafaring something to bring on.
See, I'm just contradictory, because I remember one time we were at the beach and I was reading The History of the Jews by Josephus.
That's not a vacation book at all.
No, it's not, but it was what was next for that I was reading. I just pick whatever I'm reading next. Yeah, I mean, last vacation I read Always Coming Home by Ursula Gwen, which was not a vacation book either. But, so anyway, bookshelves in some ways are stories of people. Again, even if they have books that you're like, why are they there? Sometimes it might just be because how they picked them up or who gave them to them or memories attached to them or school or they're just a hoarder and can't get rid of anything. So I don't know. Bookshelves are an interesting insight into people. And I think if I was trapped in my office for weeks at a time, I could find plenty of stuff to entertain me or even enlighten me.
Yeah.
So
I would probably finally dig into some of those textbooks I never read.
exactly. So, dear audience, thank you for, I guess, experiencing this walkthrough with us, which is a little different, but
Live from our homes.
Live from our homes. Everything's a little different now, anyways. But let's go along with something different. If you would like to send us a short, keep it just a couple minutes, story about some book or movie on your shelves, you can either write it to us, email it to us at derailedtrains@gmail.com, or pick up your phone, record it, and send it to us at derailedtrains@gmail.com. We could include it in our future official episode.
Yeah.
We would love to hear from you. Hear what's on your shelf, why it's there, who gave it to you, why it's important, why you keep it even though you detest it, whatever the story may be.
Yep. I'd love to hear those stories.
Exactly. And have more connection with us and you. Go ahead and listen to our weekly hijack if you're bored. We've got hundreds of episodes, literally.
That's true. The Weekly Hijack is fast approaching episode 200, and of course, we have over 100 episodes of Derailed Trains of Thought. Over on, I don't know if we mentioned this on the main podcast yet, Nick, but over on the Weekly Hijack, we did finish our watch through Babylon 5, and are now in the midst of Crusade, the spinoff series.
And that's coming. That'll be ended in not too many weeks.
Yeah, it's close to halfway through at this point. So I made a joke about this on social media the other day. But if you're tired of all the coronavirus news, you can go listen to us talk about a series where evil dictators unleash a plague upon Earth, forcing the planet into quarantine and its heroes to go search for a cure. In space.
Great. And so, and feel free to listen to us on iTunes or Spotify or wherever your good podcasts are found.
Also Stitcher.
Stitcher, yes. And then also, Tim, I think even though this is not an official Derailed Trains episode and just a sidetrack, I think we should end with a soundtrack.
Okay. What do you got?
Well, I have here a remix from Final Fantasy IX. The song originally was called You Are Not Alone. It was remixed by Sonicade into You Are Not Confined, and it seemed appropriate at this time.
It does. And You Are Not Alone is a classic of Final Fantasy IX, so excellent choice.
All right. Sounds good. So, Tim, I will see you when I see you.
Hopefully sooner than later.
Exactly. Adios, all.
Farewell. This is Tim.
This is Nick. Bye.
Bye-bye.